All right, excellent. Again, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today for the quarterly Vermont Interlibrary Loan Roundtable meeting. My name is Carolyn Mark, and I'm the new Interlibrary Loan and Government Services Librarian here at the Vermont Department of Libraries. I'm joined today by my colleague, Josh Muse. Josh, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Muse, consultant for library technology here, and glad to be here today.
Thanks, Josh. Really appreciate it. So I don't have too much of a lengthy agenda planned for today. I thought it could just sort of be like an informal introductory meeting. I'm really looking forward to getting to know everybody in the Vermont Interlibrary Loan community. So I thought, one way to maybe get started is if folks are interested in perhaps unmuting yourselves. You don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to. I totally get that. Maybe just saying who you are and what library you work with and what your role is, if folks are interested in doing that to get started.
Sure.
And so I'm happy to call on folks, or if you'd like to raise your hands to participate, whatever works best.
I can start.
Sure, thank you.
My name is Rhea Hines. I work for the Norman Williams Library in Woodstock, Vermont, and I am one of the circulation people, librarians.
Excellent. Nice to meet you, Rhea. Thanks for joining.
Nice to meet you all.
All right. It looks like we've got a lot of hands, so I'll just call on some random folks. Meg, would you like to join next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Meg Malone, she, her. I work at Burnham Memorial in Colchester. In addition to doing interlibrary loan, I'm the young adult services librarian here. And yeah, excited to kind of chat with everyone. I feel like as usual, I have random Clover questions, so it'll be good.
All right, awesome. Yeah, happy to try to get that sorted out and answer any questions and chat up. Sounds great. It looks like, let's see, how about Yvonne?
Oh, hi. My name is Yvonne Bruno, and I'm joined with my colleague, Jude Loris. And we are both circulation staff at Rutland Free Library, but we also handle the ILLs.
Excellent. Really nice to meet you both. Thanks for joining. And how about Kathy?
Yes, I'm I'm Kathy Beard. I'm also at Norman Williams Public Library. I'm the Director of Adult Services.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Kathy. Nice to meet you. And Tenzin?
Hi, I'm Tenzin from Fletcher Free Library, and I work at the circulation desk, and I take care of the interlibrary loan too.
Awesome. Nice to meet you. And we've got a couple more hands here. Interlibrary loan at Springfield Town Library.
Yeah, this is Chris Bloomfield. Basically, it's just our account. Basically, the email came to our interlibrary loan account, so it logged me in under that name. But
that's all good.
Yeah, basically, I do interlibrary loans and do the IT at the library and reference. We've also got Tammy Gould, who also does our part of our interlibrary loans, is also on a separate account logged in here.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. And it's really great to meet you both. And just looking at the other hands here, how about Jean or Jenny? I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name.
Hi, can you hear me? Jean?
I can, thank you.
Yeah, and Jen is here. Jen is where the action is here at Brooks for Interlibrary Loan. We work together, and we're in Brattleboro.
Awesome, thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Really nice to meet you both.
Nice to see you.
And Betsy?
Hi, I'm from Bradford, Vermont, and I do all the interlibrary loan here plus other things. And it's
awesome.
Really exciting that you're here.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm excited to be here, and thank you so much for the warm welcome. This is really sweet. And oh, looks like we have one more, Jean C. Did you have a chance to speak yet?
No, I'm from Vernon Free Library. I'm the library director and also the interlibrary loan person and basically jack of all trades.
Awesome. We love a jack of all trades. Really nice to meet you.
You too.
Great. So did everybody who wanted to take a chance to introduce themselves get to do so? I'm just making sure I've covered everybody here. Oh, Noreen, please. Sorry about that.
Hi, I'm Noreen from the Essex Free Library, and I work part-time and I wear many hats, and interlibrary loan is one of them. And I do music story time, card making classes, work at the desk in the children's department. You name it,
Awesome.
I do it. Fix books, all that stuff.
Cool. We love it. Great to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
You too.
And looks like we have Jenny from the McCullough Library here.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Jenny at the McCullough Library. I'm the director here, and I'm just hoping to telegraph what I learn here to the rest of the crew.
All right, sounds great. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining. Well, if anyone else would like to, raise a hand to introduce yourselves at any point or do so in the chat, please feel free. But I think I covered everybody that had a hand raised here. And if just I wanted to open the floor as well, if folks had any general questions about me, my background, like get to know you kind of stuff, or Clover, interlibrary loan questions, I'm all ears. So feel free to raise a hand or type your questions into the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with. Got a question from Meg.
Sure. Hi, I'll start.
Thank you.
Well, I guess first I'll start with less of a question, more of a comment. But I just my usual plea kind of at these ILL roundtables to just be checking the due dates that you're setting for Clover and make sure that they are aligning with the ones that are in your ILS. And just like if there's a special note in there, as much as we can try to be checking those, that would be awesome. I'm like, believe me, I'm sure I miss them too, but I think, especially with so many book club requests coming in, that would be great. My question though, and this is something that I feel like has come up for me sort of recently, and I'm not sure if other people have advice.
Oh, I think that your connection might have frozen, Meg. Is she frozen for you as well, Josh? Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Well, we'll give Meg a chance to jump back in and rejoin us. She might have like a bit of a connection issue. Let's see. It looks like her camera might be coming back. But the reminder that she pointed out was a solid one. So I'll definitely make a note of that for folks to be just checking their double checking their due dates in Clover and checking those against the ILS. That's a great reminder, especially as folks are requesting like multiple copies, book discussion sets, that sort of thing. So we'll give Meg an opportunity to rejoin and ask her other question that she had. But in the meantime, I'd be happy to open the floor up if other folks have a question they'd like to ask.
I have a question about the difference between retry and unfilled. Sometimes I get a request that's unfilled and it says try again later. And then sometimes I get a request that says retry. And is there a reason why the two are different?
That's
I mean,
a
if
great
I
question.
have something that says retry, do I just fill out a whole nother form and submit it?
Sure, I'm opening up Clover just so I can take a quick peek at a request and have those statuses in front of me. Just one moment. So I would say if you receive a request with the the retry, oftentimes the staff here will find in situations where a book is available in state, but there's no copies currently available. And if the request was marked, for example, like, no, please don't look out of state, we might send a note that says to please like resubmit your request. But without having the Clover like request in front of me, it's a bit tricky for me to kind of consider like a detailed response. So if you happen to have like a request number for the record that you might be able to email to me, I'd be happy to take a look at that individually and troubleshoot further. But oftentimes, the reasoning for the status update will be explained in the lender's notes at the bottom of the record. So oftentimes, staff from Vermont Department of Libraries will put in a note that says, no copies available at this time, please try again later. Or for example, this title is too new, it was just published, please try again in 6 months. So if you could pass along request numbers, I'd be happy to look into that with a little bit more detail. I apologize, I don't have a better answer for you offhand.
That's fine. I
Yeah.
just, sometimes I get requests that say unfilled, and then the lender's comments are try again in March because it's too new. Or then sometimes I get a retry that says, this copy is not available now, try again. I just didn't know when one was unfilled, or when is there a criteria as to say when you would use retry versus unfilled, but I guess it's
Oh,
both
no,
the same.
thank you for framing it that way. That actually like lights a bit of a spark. Unfilled leads me to think that it was selected because there's like less of a chance of the request being possible to be filled. Like perhaps if it's unfilled, the staff has exhausted their options for finding it in state as well as out of state, where the retry in the example that you presented, I think makes a lot of sense. Like the title's too new, please retry in 6 months. But anytime a request comes up and you've received a status update and there's a comment attached that isn't making sense or you just like a little bit of clarification, feel free to send me an email anytime and I'd be happy to look at that further.
No, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, Ria. That was a great question. And oh, Meg is back. So I'd be happy to pass it along to you, Meg, so you could continue your
Hi.
question. Hello.
I'm sorry. Of course, the internet is not cooperating with me. So sorry, everyone.
Yeah, that's all good.
And I'm sorry
Yeah.
if somehow this came up in my absence. But my question is around when something comes back as unfilled or needing to retry, and there's usually like a note sometimes from the VSS account that says, oh, it's available at this library or this library. I'm just not sure what the best like next step is to make sure that I'm like not just now sending the request kind of like back in a loop, but I'm actually now retargeting it to the right people. I just want to make sure like I'm doing the right next step, because sometimes I feel like I just like start a whole new request, but that feels like maybe not the right thing to be doing. So I would just love whatever's like the best practice that also makes everyone's life easier on your end and stuff too.
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. And while you were out and signing back in, Ria actually asked sort of the same question. And
Okay, I can
yeah.
watch the recording.
Oh, no,
then
no,
and
no, no,
pick up
no.
on that.
I'm happy to recap. I think it's great that people are being conscientious and checking out like these little status details. I think these are great questions. So thank you for asking too. Um, so I'm kind of thinking that when the request is coming through as is unfilled, just to keep it brief, perhaps that we've perhaps reached sort of the end of the road for that request, and we can always, there's always the option to try again. But if it's unfilled, perhaps we've exhausted our options for finding a copy in state as well as out of state through OCLC, where retry might be a situation such as like I've seen requests coming through where the school libraries are on break. All of the available copies were in school libraries, so they all got skipped down the lender list. It's made its way to VSS. In an instance like that, I might reach out and say, the schools are back off of break. Please retry the request or resubmit. And as far as like recreating a new request or passing it along, I think that's sort of as a case by case basis and whatever feels best for you in that moment as far as best practices, I think that would be my response for now. But as I said to Ria, if there's like a particular request number that comes up as I'm like new and kind of finding my way with these various troubleshooting scenarios, it's helpful if you pass along a request number and then I can take a look and provide some additional context as these situations come up.
Great. Yeah. And I think like related to that too, I know in the retry one, I find that sometimes I'm not sure there's like the status option where I know you can like change that to be like approved or something else. But then there's also like rebuild lender list. And I'm not sure if there's one place that's like a better next step. Or I might be looking into like overthinking this too.
No, I don't think you're overthinking. This is a great question, and as I'm getting started, these are great things for me to look into further and learn my way more about Clover. So I'm not familiar offhand with the rebuild lender list, but I've made a note of that, and I'm going to check that out later. And if it would be okay, I'll follow up with you on an email about that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the great questions. I really appreciate it. This is going to give me some stuff to learn about too.
Can I jump in for 1 sec,
Oh, yes,
Carolyn?
please, Josh. Yeah.
So whatever I say is probably you all do this way more often than I do. So I may say things that don't make any sense, but I'm just thinking of when I'm working on VSS, when people, when they say there is a copy at X, when you get a note back that says that, an approach you can use is you can put, if you want to sort of dig a little, is you can add that library specifically to the lender list for that request, and now I can't remember what the setting is to send it off
Refer to
to.
next lender would
Yes.
be, yeah.
So you could do that. I don't know if that might be more nitty-gritty than folks typically do, but that is a way to not have to make a new request. So that's one approach for that. Again, I don't know how widely that is an approach used, but how do you add a specific library? I can, how about I'll answer that in the chat in a second. The question, sorry,
Okay.
was how do you add a specific library to the lender list? And I can answer that in the chat separately.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate that. And that's a great question too.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the great questions, everyone. Really appreciate that. Looks like we have another question from Yvonne and Jude.
Hi, it's Jude. I do have a question along the same lines as the unfilled questions. And first of all, I want to say I appreciate you saying to pass along request numbers if there's a question, because sometimes I think when we look up a book in WorldCat and we see a list of libraries, and not academic libraries necessarily, so I think, okay, this one will be filled, but it does bounce back. And sometimes there's a reason and sometimes there's not. And I guess my question, it might be too complicated, but I was just wondering what the process was there when filling those out-of-state loan requests.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd be happy to sort of like provide an overview for how the requests like are received and then how we fulfill the out-of-state requests. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay, sure. So when you pop a request into Clover, there's the field, request from out of state, yes or no. If it's marked yes and the request comes to VSS's hands, which would mean that at some point when the process, when the request is being processed through Clover, there's some sort of hiccup or roadblock along the way. So it may get to a point where it's not finding any available copies in state. The libraries might be on vacation that are in state. Somewhere along the way, Clover routes the request to VSS. And in like the system of Clover, my understanding is that we're considered like the lender of last resort, which sounds like very dark and grim, but it's not. So here as like the lender of last resort, we'll take the request for an OCLC out of state request, and we have an account with OCLC. A staff person at Vermont Department of Libraries will take the ISBN title, do a couple of different searches, and we will search for that title in OCLC based on the format that has the most holdings available. And most of the time, we're requesting print books in OCLC. So from that point, we pull up the record and yeah, I totally understand like the user experience side of this, which is as a member of the public or not being logged into like the ILL OCLC piece, you might pull up a title on WorldCat and see hundreds and hundreds of holdings. But with our system, we do a sort of a limit on what we search, and there's a filter that we use called free locations. I might be getting too into the nitty gritty, but in summary, the filter that we apply filters from that WorldCat list of hundreds of libraries down to libraries that are sort of in the network of a list and consortium of libraries who share freely without any cost. So we will check that lender list, make sure that that there's at least 10 to 15 libraries as possible that will have the book available in their holdings. And then the request goes from one library to another down that lender list. So if you're receiving a message that says this item is unavailable, there might be a message attached to it that says we couldn't find any free options in state. And we've also checked OCLC and we couldn't find any free options there. There is always the possibility of if a patron is interested paying for an ILL,
Yeah,
and
I
we
was going to
do
ask that.
yeah, we are welcome, excuse me, we do welcome those types of requests. And so if you ever receive a message that says, we've exhausted our options for free copies in OCLC, feel free to contact myself if there isn't a note already in there that says if the patron is interested, there are several libraries that will loan from X to X dollar amount, and we'll try to provide a range based on what we see in OCLC. But most of the time, we'll try to cover every base possible before sending you a message that says, unfilled, locations not found, we couldn't locate. So that's kind of a brief summary of all of the steps that we go through. But we do try to do everything we can within the free locations that are available in OCLC to check for holdings. And there have been times too where there will be multiple libraries on the lender list, like dozens available, and it'll go through the first 15, and 15 is sort of the maximum amount of libraries that you can have to be considered on an OCLC request. So once it goes through those first 15, if for some reason none of them are available to lend it, we can take the lender string, check holdings of other catalogs farther down the potential list of holdings, and retry the ILL, which I've done a couple of times for requests since I've started. So there's a few paths that we go when it seems like we're hitting a dead end. And unfortunately, there are times where we're unable to obtain the ILL. But as I'm getting started and finding my way here, I'm really trying to make it a priority to, as often as possible, provide the materials within reason as often as we can. And if you are getting, and this is for everybody, if you're receiving a message and it's saying that the item is not available and you'd like a bit of an explanation why, please feel free to call me or send me an email or reach out. I'm happy to provide an explanation as to why the request wasn't filled or clarify any questions that come up along the way.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, I'm glad that was helpful. And if I can clarify anything of what I said, I know that was a lot. Just let me know. That was a great question. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? If you'd like to raise a hand or pop it in the chat. And just looking at the chat, I saw that Noreen wrote, I agree with the helpful notes as to when a request isn't filled. And yeah, I'll definitely make sure that staff are knowing to include those notes so that folks have a sense of the reasoning behind why the status update was made.
Hi, this is Betsy in Bradford. Can you hear me?
Yes, Betsy, I can hear
Hi.
you. Thank you.
Thanks. I have a question, and that is when books go astray, let's say they come to us and they're meant for another library, or vice versa. I was used to let April know that, and in her absence, I've just been communicating with the libraries directly, which I also did, but she kept, I think, a sort of tally of that. I've been trying to put that information in the monthly reporting, but is that something you would like to receive directly, or is it fine to just put it in the monthly reporting?
Oh, that's a great question. I suppose, I'm open to either. If you were sending them to my predecessor, I'm happy to be included on any sort of communications for materials that have, gone awry or whatever, or are lost in the midst. Yeah, so feel free to include me on those emails. And I think including it in the report would be that would be sensible as well. Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for entering your stats for folks on the career each month. We really appreciate that. That's a big help. And for folks who are wondering, it looks like Josh added a link into the chat that is for the Vermont Department of Libraries website, and it has a document with all of the Clover codes on it. So for folks who are interested in that resource.
FYI, this is only libraries on the courier, which is much of the time probably who you're going to be asking, but I think that's, as at the moment, that's what we have up.
Thanks, Josh. Does anyone else have any other questions? Oh, and Josh just added into the chat the format for the lender list, which is the numerical number followed by a comma, the number 4, colon, and OVR in all caps. So if you are checking that document and you're wanting to add a library to the lender list, you would just take the Clover code, and that would take the place of the word Clover code in that chat. Oh, and Tenzin added a helpful comment here that I'll just share with everybody. We have to be careful checking how damaged the books were before sending books, since we recently received sort of a moldy book. Not a question, but a reminder. Thank you. And yeah, that's a great reminder. Thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate all of the folks who have asked questions that I don't have the answer to right now, because it gives me an opportunity to do a little bit of Clover research and digging and then report back to you with my findings. So thank you for some of the treasure trove questions. Well, if folks don't have any other questions, we can certainly keep it short and sweet for today, but I'll give folks another minute or so to add their questions into the chat. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you all today for my first Interlibrary Loan Roundtable. And oh, it looks like we actually have someone here in the lobby to join us, so I'll let them in. Hi, Robin.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Nice to meet you. What library are you calling in from?
Grand Isle.
Grand Isle. Awesome. Oh, we have a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I just wondered, Caroline, how is it going for you, and what are your impressions of like Vermont Interlibrary Loan? When you're kind of grouped with a bunch of us, what kind of questions come to your mind about your or hopes that you have for our system? Any comments? Just wondering.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. I'm really enjoying it here so far. I've been here for just about a month now, and really, finding my way learning Clover and learning about OCLC. I'm fairly new to Interlibrary Loan. I was the collections development librarian at the Manchester Community Library a couple of years ago. And so I supported Interlibrary Loan there and have a bit of a familiarity with Clover, but it had been a few years. So coming in now, I'm kind of learning everything with fresh eyes. And, as far as hopes for the system, I'm really open to feedback. I'm into open communication. So if there's things that you're finding in your day-to-day workflow that could be going better if there were changes into the way that Clover worked or that system in general. I'm always open to that. We have here at the Department of Libraries, we have a monthly meeting with the company that sort of oversees and supplies us with the software that runs Clover. And so if libraries provide feedback as far as features they'd like to see, changes to the system, even things that you see when you're logged into Clover and putting in these requests and submitting the requests and whatnot, along the way, if things come up and you're like, oh, this doesn't really make sense. If this looked like this or this worked this way, that would make my workflow a lot easier. Stuff like that, I'm really interested to hear and to help you guys resolve. And just in like the scope of Vermont ILL, my goal here is to support you in the wonderful work that you do. I mean, Vermont has a great network of libraries. And for such a small state, just in the couple of weeks that I've been here, I've been amazed at the amount of requests that come in for both in-state and out-of-state requests. I've really been blown away by the volume. It's really impressive, and it's remarkable how much work like the librarians do across the state. So, my impressions have been very positive overall, and I really want to support the work that you all are doing. So if there's any feedback that comes up or any questions that you have along the way, I'm all ears. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank
Do you have
you.
any questions?
Yeah. Question from Yvonne?
Yeah, it's Jude again.
Hi.
I do have
Sorry.
You're good.
that's okay.
You're good.
I do have a question about, so when we request an ILL from out of state through you all,
Mhm.
I've been putting the ISBN number on the form. Do you also want the OCLC number, or do you want one versus the other, or both? What is easiest and best for you?
This is just personal for me. I often just search by the ISBN. So if the ISBN is in there, that's the first place that I start. So I would say if you're choosing between ISBN and OCLC, well, the ISBN is a good way to go. But Josh, do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree. I sometimes find it
Okay.
hard to reverse engineer the OCLC number or get to, or we may end up at a different record entirely. So, but I think the ISBN is definitely key.
Perfect. I don't have to change a thing.
Great. Thanks for that validation.
Absolutely. Looks like we had a question come through the chat. Can you remind me of how to search for book sets in Clover, looking for multiple copies for a book club, not kits? Um, Josh, do you know this offhand? If not, I might do a little digging.
It's been a little while since I did it.
Okay.
So there's a sort of a slightly separate well, okay, there isn't. The the ones that are holdings that the department has, you can find. There's a thing on our site that walks you through it, but I think the key is that you're looking for discussion set and the title for ours. But the other ones, everybody else's holdings, I don't think are necessarily following that format. So I don't have a great answer for it. I think we might maybe, because it has been a while for me, we may have to revisit that.
Yeah, Pat, that's a great question. And Josh, I appreciate you chiming in too. I'm just going to make a quick note of this, and I'd be happy to follow up with an email with some instructions for how to request those in Clover for you. Yeah, thanks everybody for your great questions. Oh, and Josh just added a video for requesting from Vermont Department of Libraries discussion sets in the chat. Thank you. With a note that it doesn't cover holdings in the rest of the state. Oh, and Robin chimed in with a comment that says, Pat, you can also request multiple copies that are from different libraries without submitting multiple requests. Yeah, that's a really helpful tip as well. Thank you, Robin. Noreen asked how you do that.
All right, I'm unmuted. And
Okay.
I'll turn my camera on so I'm not just a disembodied voice.
Hey, that's all good. Thanks, Robin.
You're welcome. So if you go into ILL and you search for a book, and then you've pulled up like a record that says there are multiple copies, within that record, make sure to click on one of the ones that shows more than one. So it doesn't just say one, because if it just says one and then you say, I want this, now you're done. On the left-hand side, it will say request multiple copies. So click that instead of click request. And then it's going to take a while compiling how many it says it can find. Tell me if this is making sense or not.
This is.
Okay. And then you say how many you want and you submit it. So sometimes if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, it already says it's found 48 and I need 10, I'm going to stop. I mean, I may be making numbers up a little there, but you don't need to wait the entire time that it's looking. And then it submits multiples from the list. I hope that made sense.
Oh, that made sense to me, Robin. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And I really appreciate you answering the question for me because I did not know the answer to that offhand. So thank you. I really appreciate your expertise. Oh, we have a question from Tracy.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Thanks, Tracy.
Okay. I have a question, and I don't know if other people have experienced this as well, but it has to do with multi-copy requests. When we are requesting a book that many libraries have multiple copies of in their collections, 2, 3, 4, it seems like if any of those copies are checked out, that library gets skipped over with an item not available and on to the next library. So I'm wondering, well, if anybody else has observed that, and if that's sort of the way it's supposed to be set up. What makes a little bit frustrating is it's so for example, right now I have a multi-copy request in for the women, and before I put the request in, I saw that just in Koha there were 48 copies available, and presumably, you know, there'd be copies available outside of Koha at 2, and I only want 10 copies. But all of the larger libraries have more than one copy, and you know, typically one of those copies is checked out, and so it skips over them. I've been examining all the, not all of them, but I've been examining some of the requests that are hanging in the pending folder, and then I check, and every single one of them that skipped over in their catalog, it says that it's available. So just wondering if that's a common problem, a known problem. I'm thinking what I need to do, which I've done in the past, is send specific requests to the libraries that are showing this item available in their catalog with an override. But it would be so handy not to have to do that.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate you bringing this to my attention. As far as I'm familiar with the system, I don't believe that's the way that it should operate, especially if, you know, for example, there's a book and a library has 4 copies of, and then it says, you know, 3 of 4 are available, only 1 is checked out. I don't believe that Clover should be skipping over that request. Josh, does that ring true to you?
I agree. It definitely shouldn't be doing
Yeah.
that. I can't say that it is not doing that. So
Right.
that could be. I haven't run into that before, but it could definitely be a sort of deeper Clover issue, and that might be end up being a question for autographics, especially if yeah. But if other people run into that phenomenon, I guess you'd have to sort of kind of reverse engineer it to see that that is what's specifically going. I think we could probably just ask Autographics about it and see if they can explain what's happening.
Yeah, that sounds great, Josh. And Tracy, thanks so much for
Thank you.
asking that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll report back to you directly or maybe just over to the listserv if when I hear back from Autographics about that, just to give everybody an update. Because it sounds like it would really make workflows more streamlined and it would make the request process quicker if that wasn't happening and requests weren't getting caught up and pending for that reason. So thank you for bringing that up. All right. Does anyone else have any questions for us today or comments, feedbacks?
One quick thing, and this might be obvious, but I just want to emphasize that if you have a request that is not behaving the way that you think it is, or it should be, or something weird is happening with it, or it's just not working, don't hesitate to reach out. And I'm sort of throwing Carolyn in front because she will probably be the person getting it, but we would rather try to dig into a problem that you're running into rather than you continuing to beat your head against the wall, getting something that won't quite go where it's supposed to go. So never hesitate to reach out to us.
No, I really appreciate that, Josh. That's a great sentiment. Yeah, don't give up on those like requests that seem stubborn and that they won't bounce through Clover the right way. Just please reach out to us and we'll do our best to help get them on the right track and get your patrons access to the materials that they're interested in.
As far as reaching out, Carolyn, is it best to like email you directly, or is there like an ILL staff like general email that then we should send it to, so then you guys can figure out who's the best person to deal with it? I'm totally fine to just email you, but I also don't want to like spam you if it should be going to someone else at some point.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. We have a general contact box on the Vermont Department of Libraries website, so that's always accessible to use, but I certainly don't mind if you send requests right to my inbox as well. I'd be happy to help with them. And if it's something that, I'm unable to resolve on my own, I'd be able to loop in my colleagues for assistance. And yeah, so sending them to me would be appropriate, or if it's for any reason easier to do the library contact form on the Department of Libraries website, that's accessible as well. And thanks for the question. All right, well, if there's no other questions, we can certainly wrap things up now. And yeah, I just wanted to say how much I really appreciate, the warm welcome from everyone today and for people taking the time to introduce themselves and ask, questions and share comments and share your experiences. I am, admittedly very new to this position and I definitely have big shoes to fill here. And, as I'm finding my way and learning about ILLs, I appreciate your patience and I look forward to diving into the questions that have been raised today that require a bit further research. I'll probably send my findings out maybe just in a batch on the listserv with my responses to questions that came up in today's meeting. Well, we've been recording the meeting today in Teams, so that will be made available on YouTube with a link shared on the Vermont Department of Libraries website. And when I send a recap meeting out on the ILL listserv, I'll make sure that that link is included in there as well as a link for our upcoming meetings in the calendar. I believe the next Interlibrary Loan Roundtable will be the second Tuesday in May, and that one will be in the morning. So I'm picking up like the same schedule that everyone was used to working with, but switching it up between the 1 to 3 p.m. If we have questions that require that much time, I'm happy to be available. And then the other time slot we'll bounce to would be, I believe it's 10 to noon, I think. But I'll send the link out and you'll have all the details there. And, as Josh had mentioned, if questions come up, please don't hesitate to reach out. You're never being a bother. We really appreciate the questions. We want to be here as a resource for you to help you provide access to materials for your patrons. And just as like a a baseline, I really admire all of the work that you're doing here in the state, and it's really important, vital work. It's admirable work, and we're here to support you and carrying that out. So thank you again for your time and for taking the time to join us today this afternoon for the roundtable meeting. And I look forward to seeing you all at the next get together. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks. Really great to meet you all. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.
Carolyn, you can stop the recording
I
at
was
your
just trying to find that out. Yeah, here we
at your
go.
convenience. It
Perfect.
if you it will actually